From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and affectionately known by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series: Recover Ed, Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcast aims to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We are glad you're here, and thank you for listening.
We have Chloe on, who is one of my favorite alcoholic women, and I'm not just saying that because she's my boss. So I'm so excited for you guys to be able to hear her do a workshop on step 10 for us. If you have any questions at all, please feel free and ask them or put them in the chat. If this is being recorded, if you don't want your voice on the recording. If you all have not listened to her 8 and 9, that is on the podcast as well, so you can look for that on Spotify if you want to listen to that after you hear all of the wonders of step 10 from Miss Chloe. Chloe, we have some newbies on, so I'm going to turn it over to you, but if you could also just introduce yourself for the, it's been a minute since you've been on, so that way the ladies get to know who you are.
Absolutely. Well, I am an alcoholic. My name is Chloe. My sobriety date is July 7th, 1992. I do have a home group. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I am a sponsor. I am also the director of programs at the Magdalen House. So I get to, be part of this really amazing team of women. And, each day I am just, so unbelievably overwhelmed with gratitude, for just all of the gifts that sobriety has brought to me. So I will talk about step 10. It's one of those funny things that I'm always like, how can I talk for an hour about a step? And shockingly, I always can. So it definitely is made easier for me if you guys have questions, or anything like that. I think, and I could say this about any of the steps, well, step 10 for me, like just personally for myself, it's one that I have just, really struggled with throughout my recovery, about consistency and about diligence and, commitment to it, because it's a commitment, and it's an area where my self-will and my self-reliance wants to come back over and over again, in the form of me thinking, it's not that big of a deal. I don't need to call my sponsor about this. I know what she's going to say anyway. I'll just do a quick, 4th column. What's my part? And it really ends up just diminishing the entire purpose of step 10. So I want to first start on 59, where it has our handy little list of our steps, and step 10 is continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And so what that means, just very basically, is that I am throughout my day being aware and mindful and awake to how I show up. Now, I can't really do this if I haven't done the 4 through 9. Like, that's the bottom line is 4 through 9 is where I'm really learning about the flaws in my makeup. I'm learning about the stage character that I play. I'm learning about the defects of character that I'm driven by, what my fears are. It's like I've become awakened to, who I am multidimensionally, right? Like when I am in fear, what do I do? And so if I haven't done a thorough 4th step, if I haven't, shared that with a sponsor, if I haven't really looked at step 6 and 7 at what those defects of character that rule me, then I can't effectively do a 10th step. I just can't, because I don't know yet. So, but again, now that I'm at that step, now that I'm here, now that, I've been given instruction on this, for myself, again, this is where my self-reliance shows up most frequently, where I just think I don't need somebody else. And just to kind of, cut to the punchline, like it doesn't matter how long we are recovered. I personally always need that outside person to whom I am being accountable to. Some of it is so that it's to right size me. Some of it is, so that I am, so I'm not in a position where I am the gatekeeper of my own actions and my own beliefs and my own thoughts and my own fears, where I'm really being transparent and being humbled by sharing just how petty I still am, just how petty is like my biggest defect. I am so petty. I am so self-centered. I am so fearful. I am so insecure. Like all of these things crop up on a daily basis. And if I'm keeping it to myself, then I'm trying to, like we learned in 4 and 5, or really 5th step, I'm trying to enjoy this reputation that I know that I don't deserve. And that's what the 10th step is about, is really being so completely upfront with somebody about who I really am. I am really still so afraid of being hurt. I am so afraid of what other people think of me, that when that comes up, here's what I do. And when I can bring that to a sponsor before I've gotten into the solution, on the front end where I'm still in the mess, then I'm giving her the opportunity to teach me. I am remaining teachable. I'm remaining humble. And I am allowing God to use somebody else. I'm allowing God to use another channel with which to direct me. And again, the first thing I always need to do is reduce that pride and ego, because those are the things that block me from God so quickly. And the 10th step, I believe, is all about reduction of pride and ego. To back up just a little bit, sort of an overview. I think, when I'm not willing to 10th step, or when I'm not 10th stepping, it's not a 10th step issue. It's a first step issue. And we can say that about any of the steps. That's always the truth for me, that if I'm not 10th stepping, it's because I don't believe my life depends on it. If I'm not making amends, it's because I don't believe that my life depends on it. And so anytime I'm balking on a step, anytime I'm dragging my feet, I have to bring it back to those very basic things that I learned about myself in step 1, that basic surrender of, do I believe that I need that lack of power is my dilemma? Do I believe that? Do I believe that I am doomed? If I believe that, then there can be no balking in any of these steps. If I truly, truly have that, if I'm living in that place of complete surrender, then there is no balking. There is no contingencies. My pride and ego have right-sized me, and I am willing to pick up that phone and say, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I did. Here's, how I just acted, because I believe, and I'm operating from that place of really understanding that I don't have the luxury that other men have of living in this stuff. That I need to do this. So again, it's a first step issue, and I can still be there. I can still think that I have this luxury, that I have a little wiggle room, that it's not that big of a deal, that it's not like I'm going to drink over this. But the truth is, I've just done, if I'm on step 10, I've just done all of this hard work, in 1 through 9, or, especially 4 through 9, of clearing away all of the stuff that blocks me from God. And that's the point of this. That's the point of step 10, is that I have just cleared away all of this garbage, all of, again, these fears, these resentments, these secrets, these character defects. I've offered it to God. I've shared it with another person. And, I have stepped into the sunlight of the Spirit here. I am connected. I am, and that's what, we're accessing power now. And so step 10 is really being able to do 4 through 9 all day long, staying connected and trying to keep those, those things that will block me from God, cleared away. Because again, if I truly believe that lack of power is my dilemma, then what I need more than anything is to access power. Okay, so let's go into the book for a minute. We'll start on 84. And, this is following after, we've just read the 9th step promises. And so in the middle of 84, it's asking, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. So this is telling me that this is something I continue to do. This isn't a one and done. This is, something that I'm going to continue to take personal inventory, which was our fourth step, right? We're going to keep doing, and it may not, in step 10, we're not necessarily writing it down. This is like a spot check. This is like on the go. This is throughout the day, because maybe you guys are better at this than I am, but I have remained very human and very flawed, even with lots of experience with this stuff. And so I have to continue to do this all through the day. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. And so, again, like these are really clear directions. So we're vigorously commencing this way of living, which this way of living is continuing to set right any new mistakes, continuing to take personal inventory as we cleaned up the past. So as we cleaned up the past, that's our 9th step, right? So, again, to kind of jump backwards, we've just finished writing our 4th step. We've shared our 5th step with our sponsor. We've taken that list of character defects. We've given it to God. We've written our 8-step list of amends. And then we start cleaning up the past. And as we are doing this, immediately, right away, we are doing step 10. Okay. Like this, it's going hand in hand with making these amends. The last thing we want is to set aside this 10th step and continue to cause harm to other people and keep adding to that 8-step list. We do it anyway, but we're trying our best not to. We have entered the world of the spirit, which is, that we built that arch, right? We've built that arch, we've stepped through, we've entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. So one thing I want you to notice as we read through this, that's the third, I believe that's the 3rd time we've used the word continue. It's going to keep saying it. This is all about continuing over and over again. Continue to do this. Continue to do this. We don't arrive. We don't arrive at, perfect. We don't arrive. We do arrive at recovered, but that doesn't mean that we're not still causing, that we're not still showing up with fear and with resentment and, with defects of character. So here's another continue to watch. And so here's what we're looking for. We're looking for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Those are the things that we're really trying to be mindful about throughout our day, because from those, everything else springs, right? Like, my jealousy, I've got lots of jealousy. That's like, there's all of these other defects of character, but they fit underneath these sort of broad headers. So this is what we're continuing to look for. And then when these crop up, not if these crop up, when these crop up, all day long, these are cropping up for me. We say this prayer, we ask God. So anytime it's saying we ask God, that's a prayer, at once to remove them. So when these crop up, we immediately ask God to remove them. That's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is we discuss them with someone immediately. So that could be, it could be my sponsor. If I can't get my sponsor, it's okay to have a couple of trusted, friends that we share things with. But I do, my caution with that is when I'm picking friends to share 10th step with, I have a tendency to cut corners. My first inclination is to pick up the phone and call the friend that's going to be like, oh my God, what a jerk. Even if she's sober, even if she's, recovered, even if she's sponsoring other people, she's my friend. If I'm calling the person that's going to say, oh man, yeah, that, like, he was way out of line. That's one of the biggest reasons that I call my sponsor. Because she never is going to say, what a jerk. She's going to say, whoa, you were really selfish there. Or, how does self-reliance show up in this situation? So, again, that, it's not the, there are times that it's appropriate to check in with somebody else, but I do I do try to keep this to my sponsor. My other really big reason for that is, again, like my pride and ego is always trying to hide out. It's always trying to keep me undercover. It's always trying to, allow me to cut corners. And, if I'm, if I'm driving to work and, somebody cuts me off and I flip them off and I swear at them, and then I, call, Sally and do a quick 10 step about that. And then a little later at work, I tell a lie to somebody and I call, Jenny and tell Jenny, that I was just dishonest. And, then at lunch, I go and meet some guy who's not my boyfriend and I, accidentally make out with him a little bit. And then I call, Jessica and tell Jessica about that, and Jessica's going like, that's, that's not cool, and all through the day, I'm doing these things, I stop at a store, I shoplift a little bit, and, call Debbie and tell her about it. I may be getting good direction from each person may be holding me accountable, but when I'm just giving little pieces to a bunch of different people, it's not that alarming. I mean, not that I should be making out with people accidentally, but, it looks like an isolated incident. Whereas if I'm calling one person and giving them this whole litany of ways that I'm showing up in my day, she can go, holy shit, man. Holy cow, man. That's, really concerning. Do you look can you see just how disconnected you are? Can you see how you are running on self-will? You are absolutely, you're not recovered. So again, that's my biggest reason for wanting to bring my 10 steps to the same person. Ideally my sponsor. If my sponsor is not the one that I want to call, that's probably a bigger issue that I should look at. And, and maybe my sponsor isn't the right fit for me if I'm not taking these things to her. So again, that's my reason for going to one person with my 10 steps. Okay. So back to, we were on the second thing we do, which is discussing them with someone immediately. And the third thing is we make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And so, and this is probably more of a pet peeve of mine, but first pet peeve is when people will call me and be like, I just need a 10 step for a minute. Oh my God, Lisa is such a jerk. And then they just really want to gossip to me about, what a jerk so-and-so is. That's not a 10 step. That's just really dumping your resentment on me or trying to gossip or just, engaging in some character assassination. So really the 10 step is about, being transparent about where I'm being affected by something or where my actions are questionable. But the other piece with this making amends quickly, there's a difference between making amends and apologizing. And sometimes apologies are the appropriate, response. There's nothing wrong with saying, oh, sorry, man, I didn't mean to cut in front of you in that line. Or I'm so sorry if that, if you wanted that last piece of bacon. But when we are making amends, we are fixing it, and again, that's why the 10th step is so important, that in coming after we have, made it through the first 9 steps, is that we have learned now how to make an amends, and we've learned the, the principle behind it. If I'm making an amends, I am taking ownership and I'm giving the other person an opportunity to share with me how they were affected, and I'm trying to fix it. Again, it's not just about taking responsibility. It's about amending the situation. So we're making amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. So if I'm making amends for taking the last piece of bacon, sometimes it's just an apology. Sometimes if I've really caused harm, it's about going out and getting a new package of bacon and cooking it up, right? But again, at this point, we've already talked to our sponsor, we've been given direction, we know what the appropriate way to fix this is. And then the fourth thing is, then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So turning our thoughts to someone we can help. If I'm at work, that may not mean that I go out and, rake my neighbor's front lawn. Like, I'm at work, it's like, that would be very selfish of me to take away from my employer, because I want to feel better. Sometimes it's just sending a quick text to somebody saying, hey, thinking about you. I know you were having, I know you were going to the doctor today. Hope that went well. Sometimes it's just about taking a pause and saying a prayer for somebody. This is turning our thoughts to somebody. This isn't, like I need to go and, volunteer at the soup kitchen for the afternoon. Not that that's wrong. That sometimes is the right thing. But this is really about, like, where am I supposed to be right now? If I'm supposed to be at work, or if I'm at my kid's birthday party, it's not appropriate for me to, go to the soup kitchen. What's appropriate is, again, turning my thoughts to somebody that I can help. And again, it may be, making a plan to do something later. So love and tolerance of others is our code. And I love that. Like, that's the code that we're trying to live by today. Love and tolerance of others. And, it's really the filter that we put everything through. Was I loving? Was I tolerant? If not, what's going on, right? This is how we are trying to show up in life today.
Hey, Chloe.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
So this is just something that's been that has come up for me recently, and the importance of discussing something with your sponsor whenever things crop up. The first thing being that my sponsor likes to remind me that if I don't want to 10-step or don't want to be honest about something, then I'm enjoying a reputation in my heart that I know I don't deserve. It's like her favorite thing to say to me. And then the second thing is sometimes, like, I think that I'm 10-stepping about one thing, and then my sponsor is really good at, like, showing me my selfishness and, like, this thing. Or, like, I think that, like, I'm calling to 10-step about fear, and then she's, like, asking me, like, why I'm resentful. And I didn't, like, I'm thinking when I'm calling her that, like, I already know, the things, and she's really good at, like, unveiling the other things that I'm, like, asleep to in that moment. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. So good. So good. I want to always see myself in the best possible light. I just do. And we love talking about how hard we are on ourselves, and, we're harder on ourselves than anybody else is on us. And, to some extent that's true, but I am also so forgiving of myself. I am always like, oh, just a little hormonal, that's why I snapped at my kids this morning, PMS, or, oh, I just haven't been getting a lot of sleep, and that's why, I'm not being very productive at work. Like, I give myself so many cop-outs, so many shortcuts. And when I can call my sponsor when I'm in the middle of something, generally the feedback I get is about selfishness. And, like, I don't ever want to look at myself as selfish. I just, like, my stage character, is just like, like this horrible, I mean, really it's a martyr, but how I see it is just this loving and giving and thoughtful and kind person. And, underneath, really, I'm just super selfish, and I'm trying to, like, set the stage so that you'll do things for me in the future if I want you to, and so again, that sponsorship has just been so vital, because she knows me at this point. I've just shared my 5th step with her. She knows what drives me. And that's really the beauty of that, sponsorship relationship, is she knows how I show up. She knows what my true nature is, and she can keep being a mirror for me back to that. Does anybody else have any questions at this point?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think it's a common thing, or that we often think that I don't have anything to 10-step. I know that I went through that, where I just thought, like, I was killing it. And then that also, I hear that a lot in next step, is that everything's good. I don't have anything to 10-step. What would you say to that?
I would say, I would say you're delusional, and not from a place of judgment, because I am delusional too. What worked for me, so I when I moved to Austin, I got this new sponsor. And what that new sponsor showed me was that I had been really sponsoring myself for a long time. And her biggest and first, So first of all, she sponsored a lot of people, and I really wanted her to be my sponsor. And so like I misrepresented myself in some ways, because when I first sat down with her and asked her, I said, I'm really low maintenance, you know, and we like now laugh about that, because she was like, you know, like you were delusional is what you were. But like you know, like I thought of myself as low maintenance. Again, like I was low maintenance because I was completely self-reliant, you know, like I, you know, didn't, like I was unsponsored really. Like I had forgotten how to use a sponsor for accountability. And so when I was coming to her, I was basically like, I want you as a sponsor in name, but I don't actually want to do anything. So, you know, and again, it was like a slippery, like it was this slow, gradual decline into that self-reliance. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's sort of like in our alcoholism, the alcoholic life becomes the only normal one. That was true in my recovery too, that like my self-reliant life became the only normal one. And so when her first instruction to me was she wanted me 10th stepping with her a minimum of 3 times a week. And I was like, yeah, no problem. But then I would get to the end of the week and I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't 10th stepped at all. And so because I was then afraid that she was going to be mad at me, you know, it's like this selfishness and this, you know, like Stephanie, you were just saying, you know, like I wanted her to think a certain way of me. I wanted her to respect me. I wanted her to like me. I wanted her to think highly of me. And so I didn't want to not 10th step, you know, like, again, very selfishly motivated, but, you know, whatever gets us there, I guess. It made me hyper vigilant about, you know, about these, you know, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fears that would crop up in my day. And I became very aware of how often they were there and how often I just dismissed them. And so once I, you know, started being, and I will say, here's the key to good 10th stepping is good 11th stepping. If I'm doing nightlies, if I'm really being vigilant about looking at my day in review, I am seeing where all of these things have cropped up. If I'm not doing a nightly, it becomes really hard to do a 10th step. When I'm doing nightly, I'm looking to see, like, you know, what corrective measures have to happen, where I've been resentful, where I've been selfish. And so I'm looking back through the day at all of this stuff. And so and then on awakening, I'm kind of reviewing what happened yesterday, what I need to do today to make it right. I may be hopefully taking those defects of character into that 7th step prayer. And then it's setting me up in my day to be really aware of where, you know, this resentment, dishonesty, selfishness, fear comes up. And it allows me to be a better 10th stepper because I'm awake. This whole thing is just about waking up. You know, this is an awakening of the spirit, but it's also awakening of our own actions and beliefs and, you know, all of these things that we've just been looking at. And, you know, the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps are all about staying awake, staying present to it, and staying connected with God. And, you know, that is not about self-reliance. And so I can't remember what your question was.
You answered it. It's okay. But I guess the next thing I want to ask is how you build awareness around those things. But you just talked about it through. So if somebody's not aware, like, what would you tell them to do? And you would say nightly inventory.
Nightly inventory. I mean, you know, again, it's, you know, this is all built on 4 through 9. You know, when we're sitting down and making amends for, you know, our past actions, sometimes our present actions, you know, there is no clearer way to see how we affect the people around us than to sit across from them and take ownership for our mistakes, you know, and if we are truly feeling the regret around that, around our, you know, how we've affected these people, then we do become a lot more aware. You know, if my actions are objectionable to me, then in turn, I do become a lot more aware during my day. You know, but again, you know, it's like, it is this, you know, it's a progression. The things that I could get away with in my first year of sobriety that were not objectionable to me, and they didn't need to be objectionable to me, today are objectionable to me. And we just have this path that gets more narrow. Stephanie, have I told a story? Well, I guess it's a new group of people. I love this story about the early Quakers and it's just my favorite. Maybe I may have talked about it in 6 and 7 because I do refer to it a lot there, and I don't fact check me because probably some of the historical pieces are a little bit wrong. But so the Quaker religion is all about like pacifism and like, like this gentle spirit, this gentle nature. And it was started by this guy named, what's his name? Fox. His last name is Fox, but maybe Samuel Fox or something. We'll just call him Fox. And he, and so in America, this was during like the early days of America. One of our founding fathers was this guy, William Penn. And he was actually the founder of Pennsylvania. And he wanted to be a Quaker. Like he had, sort of come upon this religion, and he was, really trying to adopt the tenets of it. But one of the things in those, because he was this influential person in America, he was expected to wear a sword as part of his, uniform. And, it was just part of the garb that he was supposed to wear for formal events. But he knew that it was in contrast to what he was supposed to be doing as a Quaker because they were peaceful. And so he reached out to George Fox, that's his name. He reached out to George Fox and he said, like, what do I do about the sword? And George Fox said, carry the sword until you can't carry it anymore. And what he meant was, at some point that sword will get too heavy. At some point that sword will be objectionable to you. But until it is, it's not a problem. Really, it's only once things start rubbing you the wrong way that they are something that we need to look at and take care of. But it will happen. And he did, the end of the story was that he did put down the sword and he didn't end up carrying it anymore. But I think that's what happens for us in step 10 is that there are things that we aren't aware of, that they're not objectionable yet. They're not things that we are still asleep to. But in this process of waking up, and because we are continuing this for a lifetime, things that are okay today, a year from now, 5 years from now, may stop being okay. And that's something I think that as we become sponsors, is important to recognize, is that not everybody's going to be at the same place. We just aren't. All right. Any other questions before we get moving on in the pages? Okay. So bottom of 84, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And those are our 10-step promises, and they're giant. These are huge, and these are really what we are seeking, as we read about this in step 2, right? Like this is what we need. We need to get to this place where we are not having, like if you went to treatment and did any of those relapse prevention groups where you're directed to think the drink through, I knew that wasn't going to work for me. I'd never been able to do that. And I had that white knuckle sobriety trying to like stay, really aware of every thought, every intention, because I was so afraid I was just going to accidentally get drunk. But, what this 10-step promises is that now we are placed in this position of neutrality. We are protected. We are safe. We have not sworn it off. We are not doing anything except maintaining this open channel to God. That's what my responsibility is. And as a result, I am placed in a position of protection. Because again, and I think I talked about this the last time I was on here with you all, like really these 12 steps aren't about alcohol. These 12 steps are about gaining access to a power. That's all we have to do here. We gain access to a power and then we maintain that access to that power. And one of the results of doing that is that we don't drink anymore. and it's not even in my hands. Thank God, because and I've always loved this, what God, if I believe that God is love and that God wants me to be happy and successful and have this amazing life, which I do believe, then why would God give me a choice over something that's going to kill me? My brain is so broken around alcohol. Why would God give me a choice around it? He hasn't. He has taken away that problem. And my only responsibility is to keep in fit spiritual condition. That's it. That's all I have to do. And I think about, we have this fatal disease. What other fatal disease would people be given this really simple and gratifying and amazing and, beautiful solution? And then, have the sufferer say, well, I don't know if I want to do all that writing. I don't know if I really want to get on my knees and pray to, some dumb God. We have this, this way of life that gives us just so many gifts, and we balk and we drag our feet, and we, try to cut corners, and, and we're so complacent and lazy around it. I am so spiritually lazy around it, and that's where it becomes a first step issue. Do I believe that my life depends on keeping in fit spiritual condition? Sometimes I don't believe it. Sometimes I think I'm doing a pretty good job of running the show myself. Any questions around that? Any comments?
Can I just say something? I feel a little overwhelmed by all of this, because I feel like you and I are just right on together with the whole self-reliance thing when it comes to 10th stepping, because I'm not good at it either. Before I just don't call my sponsor for it, because I feel like I know what she's going to say, or I kind of I'm self-aware, I know where I'm wrong, or I think I do. So how do you get over that?
It's about discipline. It's like we are undisciplined people, right? We just are. And, if it means that you set a timer in your phone for, 5 o'clock each night, and you call her and you just make a point of 10th stepping something, it's just about, again, it goes back to step one. Do you believe that your life depends on it? My guess is no, you don't believe it, because you think it's not that big of a deal. Not like I'm going to get drunk over this. Yeah, you are. It's like my friend Jeff talked about how it's like we are a jar, right? We're a jar, and when, we're a jar filled with water, and we are, I don't know how he says it. I'm going to make it up myself. Now it's mine. We're an empty jar, and we are throwing pebbles in all day of these, these resentments, these fears, these dishonesties, and we're dropping them in. And when it gets to the top and it starts overflowing, we're drunk, right? That's our relapse, right? But the problem is we don't know how big the jar is. The problem is we don't know how big those rocks are. And I think I do. I think my delusion thinks that I will see a relapse coming. My delusion thinks, well, if I get really, if I get really sick, then I'll see it. And then I'll catch up. I'll write that inventory. I'll call the sponsor. I'll get on my knees. But the truth is, by the time we get to that point, we are so delusional. We have no idea how sick we are. We have no idea how close to a drink we are. As soon as, if we're asking ourselves, am I spiritually fit? That's a good question, because usually when I am not spiritually fit, I'm not even asking myself that, because I think that I am. I think I'm doing okay. So my suggestion, Jessica, is to get back to step one, spend some time really sort of re-surrendering in step one. And then it just may have to be a discipline, and, write your nightly inventory every night, bring it to your, on awakening in the morning, set an alarm for some time during the day that you can commit to calling her. And even if you're just 10 stepping on her voicemail, even if you think that it is the stupidest thing, it probably is. Mine are so dumb and so cringy and so ridiculous and petty. And it is so important for me to step into that and be like, my boyfriend didn't want to come over last night, and I feel rejected, and I feel unloved, and I don't think I'll ever be able to find happiness. It is so awful. The things that I have to 10 step make me look so bad. It also allows my sponsor to guide me and, like Stephanie said, I want to enjoy a reputation that I don't deserve. I want to look unaffected by the dumb things in life, and I'm not. My feelings get hurt. I feel disrespected, all of these things that I feel like I should be further along by now. I've been sober a long time. I think that I should have arrived at some sort of spiritual hilltop, and I should be a lot more sober than I am, a lot more recovered than I am. And the truth is, like, this is who I am, and we can't build a spiritual structure on the foundation of a lie. And my foundation is who I am. Who am I showing up as today? What are the flaws in my makeup? That's what we're still looking at in this inventory. What are the flaws in my makeup? Well, I'm insecure. Well, I'm self-reliant. Well, I'm looking to people to fill something that only God can fill. And when I'm willing to, share that with a sponsor, then I'm, that's the way I'm going to get better.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Sorry. It's just, I literally, my sponsor just said almost the same thing in my fifth step that I just did, that it's like whenever we pick up a drink, like we don't see necessarily that mental obsession coming. It's the same thing when we get into like spiritual sickness or selfishness. Like we can't be like, oh, well, if I get this spiritually sick, then I'll see it and I'll stop. And so we have to like constantly be like doing the work and bringing it to God because of like what you just said. And so I just thought that was so cool because she literally just had that conversation with me in our fifth step.
Yeah, she and I were talking about you, and I
know.
Just kidding.
I just wanted to like reaffirm that importance,
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Again, my mind will try to tell me all of these ways that I don't have to be transparent with people, Anybody else?
I have a question. So I find it easy to identify selfishness and dishonesty around resentments and fear, but like I do not find it easy just to spot that throughout my day. Do you do selfishness and dishonesty often? And like, I don't know, how will I start identifying that other than like God given, you know what I mean? Like when my higher power like brings me to that point.
That's a great time to call your sponsor, and she can help you identify. No, I think, they are tricky, they are tricky. They're unattractive. And so I don't want to own them. I don't want them to be me. I want to be, kind and like, I want to look a certain way, and I don't want to look selfish. For me, like, I mean, I think everybody's selfishness, it has its own flavor, right? Like, it hides behind these different things. And for me, like a lot of times my selfishness hides behind, looking like I care about other people. It's like, it's all about the actor playing the director. That's where mine shows up. I look like I really love you and I really care about you, and I'm just trying to give you this great advice, and if you would just follow my really good suggestions, we'd all be happy. But the truth is, my selfishness is I need you to be okay for me to be okay. And if you would just get your life together, then I wouldn't have to worry about you. Another favorite of mine is, with selfishness is that like I show up in this way that I want my happiness, my life, I guess just my happiness to be everybody's first priority. And so my feelings get hurt when you don't like go out of your way to make sure that I'm happy first. And so in what I identify more with that is resentment, because then I feel like people don't respect me. I feel like people, don't show up for me. I feel like people don't care about me. But the truth is, if I look underneath it, it's usually a selfishness of I have set things up where I want you to prioritize my happiness. But, for me, like I do write a lot of 4-column inventory even today. I do, because I just can miss stuff. I do 10th step this stuff because I can miss stuff. But nightlies are really like, that's on a day-to-day basis where I can see this stuff, So I was just teasing you, Mandy, about your sponsor.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Okay, let's go back in here. And again, like just to kind of, because we didn't really talk about what I just read very much, but again, the biggest promise that we get in step 10 is that we don't drink anymore. You know, we can't, even when the thought crosses our mind, which it will sometimes occur to me that like, oh, hey, you know, like I'm in the liquor section at the grocery store, or I'm in a hotel out of town, nobody would know. My next thought is reacting as if from a hot flame. And if I am not reacting as if from a hot flame, then there is something wrong with my spiritual condition, you know, and so if I'm sitting there thinking about it for a while and plotting it, that is a huge indicator that there is something wrong with my spiritual condition. If I am, you know, like, and if these are outside issues, I'm not going to really get into it, but, you know, we find ways of just like skirting past things, whether it's like desserts with alcohol in them, or, you know, maybe CBD oil, or, you know, I mean, again, like, I don't want to really get into that because, you know, painkillers, right? Like there's all sorts of medications, again, outside issues, but there are ways that I will justify treating my spiritual condition. And, you know, again, it go like, if we take this several steps back, when it first crossed my mind, if I did not react as if from a hot flame, then, you know, that's the indicator of my spiritual condition. You know, if that makes sense. If I am spiritually fit, then I can't do any of those things. I will, you know, I will recoil. And that's what I depend on, because my sound reasoning has failed to hold me in check over and over and over again throughout my life. I cannot rely on my sound reasoning when it comes to alcohol. Therefore, I have to maintain this fit spiritual condition so that I don't have to be the one trying to monitor myself. Okay, middle of 85. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. So this is, you know, this is a big warning here. It's easy to do that. You know, this is a program of action. This isn't a program of contemplation. This isn't a program of self-reflection. This is a program of action. And this is all about forward motion. We're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. And that's what we were just talking about, right? We're the last to know. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Now, does everybody understand what being a recovered alcoholic is? If you've lived for long in AA, there's a, you know, it's a source of contention for some people. But what this is telling me is I'm not cured of alcoholism. I am recovered. It's like if I, you know, broke my leg. I can be cured of that broken leg. I can, you know, I can heal from that. That can be fixed. I can be recovered from that broken leg. It does not mean that I can't break it again. And again, that's what we're talking about here. We are not cured of alcoholism. You know, we have to maintain this connection with God so that we can remain recovered. So what we really have is this daily reprieve, and it is contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And by maintenance, it doesn't mean that we're complacent. It doesn't mean that we're not moving forward. All of this is about forward motion. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. That's a big one. Every day we have to do that. And here's a prayer. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. That's the second must there. We can exercise our willpower along this line, all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. And now, you know, in the third step, we talked quite a bit about will. And what these steps are trying to do is to take, you know, God's will and to take our will and to align them so that we are trying, so that we're doing the same thing. You know, but I want to be all over the place. I want, you know, my will is when I'm operating out of fears, when I'm operating out of resentments, when I'm full of dishonesty and selfishness, I'm trying to get everything I can get out of the show. I'm trying to look good. I'm trying to force you to think of me in a certain way. And so my will and God's will are not lining up. And again, 4 through 9 is all about aligning our will. And, you know, 10, 11, and 12 is about keeping that alignment. Keeping me close to God and, you know, exercising my willpower along God's willpower, all that I want. It's the proper use of the will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Again, we've got that word action there. Again, this is all about action. And if we're not doing a whole lot, then that's a pretty good indicator that our spiritual condition is probably suffering or going to suffer from it. So, that last paragraph is where we need to live. We need to live in that place where, we are sensing the flow of His Spirit into us, where we have become God conscious. We're desperately looking for inspiration, for strength, direction from God, because, if we are trying to live with our will aligning with His will, that's where we access that new way of living, where hopefully we're causing less harm for the people around us. Do you guys have questions, comments?
All right. Well, Chloe, thank you very much for joining us. I'll see the Tuesday group at 1:10. And then Ellen from the Thursday group is telling her story tonight at 7 on the regular Maggie's meeting link, if you guys want to tune in to support your next step sister. All right. Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services that we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channel by searching for the Magdalen House.